Friends, I want to begin with a simple truth. Most of us spend years trying to be who we think we should be, rather than who we truly are. We wear masks, hide our fears, and silence our stories because we're terrified that if people saw the real us, they might turn away. But what if I told you that the very thing we hide is often the very thing that connects us most deeply with others? Showing up as ourselves isn't easy. It asks us to stand in the tension between fear and courage, between shame and self-acceptance. But when we dare to show up, even imperfectly, something beautiful happens. We not only free ourselves, we also give permission to others to do the same. We often grow up believing that vulnerability is something to be ashamed of. From childhood, many of us are taught not to cry in public, not to admit when we're scared, not to let others see our insecurities. Somewhere along the way, we confuse vulnerability with fragility. But the truth is, vulnerability isn't the absence of strength, it's the very essence of it. To let yourself be seen, flaws and all, requires far more courage than hiding behind a carefully built mask. Think about the people you admire most in your life. Are they the ones who always seemed perfect, untouchable, and polished? Or are they the ones who dared to tell you the truth, even when it was hard? The ones who shared their struggles, their failures, their heartbreaks, and in doing so, made you feel less alone. It is often those raw, honest moments that inspire us more than any picture of perfection ever could. Vulnerability invites connection in a way that polished performances never can. At its core, vulnerability is a risk. It's the risk of putting your heart on the table without knowing how others will respond. It's saying, "I need help," when your pride is begging you to stay silent. It's admitting, "I don't know," when everyone expects you to have the answer. These moments feel terrifying because they leave us open to judgment, but they are also the moments that allow real trust to grow. In relationships, in leadership, in every corner of life. Ironically, the walls we build to protect ourselves often become the very barriers that keep love, belonging, and connection out. We think, if no one sees the real me, I can't be hurt. But the truth is, if no one sees the real us, we can't be fully loved either. Vulnerability is not about oversharing every detail of our lives, but about opening up enough so that others can meet us where we really are, not where we pretend to be. In workplaces, families, and friendships, vulnerability shifts the atmosphere. A leader who admits mistakes creates a culture where others feel safe to try and fail. A parent who acknowledges their struggles teaches their children that imperfection is human, not shameful. A friend who says, "I'm not okay right now," gives permission for honesty instead of small talk. In each of these spaces, vulnerability becomes a bridge, not a weakness. And here's the paradox: when we risk showing our softest side, we discover our greatest resilience. Vulnerability is the birthplace of empathy, creativity, and courage. It demands strength because it requires us to face uncertainty and still step forward. It asks us to trust not only others, but also ourselves, to believe that who we are is enough. Far from being weakness, vulnerability is one of the bravest choices we can ever make. We often imagine courage as something dramatic, rushing into danger, standing on a stage without shaking, or making bold choices without hesitation. But in truth, courage is rarely about eliminating fear. It's about learning to carry fear with us and still stepping forward. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is choosing to act in spite of it. If we waited to feel fearless before moving, most of us would never take a single meaningful risk. Think about the first time you tried something new. Whether it was speaking in front of a crowd, starting a new job, or saying, "I love you," before you knew how the other person would respond. Chances are, your heart raced, your hands trembled, and doubt whispered in your ear. But you did it anyway. That trembling step, not the absence of nerves, is what courage looks like. It's not glamorous, it's messy, sweaty, and uncomfortable. But it's also where growth happens. Fear will always be present because fear's job is to protect us. It scans the world for threats and tells us to retreat. But courage has a different voice. A quieter, steadier one that whispers, "This matters, so keep going." Courage doesn't silence fear, it keeps fear from being the loudest voice in the room. Every time we choose courage over comfort, we strengthen that inner voice. Over time, we build a trust with ourselves that says, "I can do hard things." In relationships, courage might look like apologizing first, or admitting you've been hurt. In work, it might mean pitching an idea you're not sure will succeed. In life, it might mean walking away from something safe, but unfulfilling in order to pursue what sets your soul on fire. None of these acts erase fear, they simply refuse to let fear run the show. Courage is about aligning your actions with your values, even when your body is begging you to stay small. Courage also grows in community. When we see someone else daring bravely, it sparks something inside of us. Their courage gives us permission to try, and when we share our own small acts of bravery, we pass that permission along. It's a chain reaction. Fear isolates us, but courage is contagious. A single person daring to take a step forward often inspires others to rise with them. The beauty of courage is that it compounds. The more we practice it, the more resilient we become. Each time we walk through fear, our capacity expands. What once seemed impossible begins to feel like the next natural step, and though fear never disappears entirely, it loses its power to control us. In that sense, courage isn't just a single moment of bravery. It's a lifelong practice of choosing to move forward, over and over again, no matter how loudly fear protests. Shame is one of the heaviest emotions we carry, and unlike guilt, which says, "I did something bad," shame whispers, "I am bad." That whisper can echo inside us for years, shaping how we see ourselves and how we show up in the world. The most dangerous thing about shame is not just the pain it causes, but the silence it demands. Shame tells us to hide, to keep quiet, to bury our truth where no one can see it. And in that silence, shame grows stronger. When we hide our struggles, we give shame the fuel it needs. It thrives in secrecy. We convince ourselves that if anyone knew the full story, they would judge us or turn away. So we stay silent, wearing masks of strength while we suffer alone. But silence is not protection. It is a cage. It isolates us from the very people who might help carry our burden, and reminds us over and over that we are unworthy of love. The remarkable thing is that shame begins to wither the moment it's spoken aloud in safe spaces. When we risk saying, "This is what I'm going through," or "This is what I've done," we give others the opportunity to respond with empathy. And empathy is shame's greatest enemy. Where shame says, "You're alone," empathy answers, "Me too. I see you. You're not alone." That exchange doesn't erase the struggle, but it loosens shame's grip. Think about a time you finally admitted something you had carried in silence. Maybe it was sharing a failure with a trusted friend, or confessing a mistake you thought would make people turn away. More often than not, instead of rejection, you found understanding. Instead of judgment, you found compassion. In those moments, we learn that the stories we fear most don't separate us. They connect us. Empathy doesn't require solutions, it requires presence. Sometimes the most powerful thing someone can say is not, "Here's how to fix it," but, "I understand. I've been there." When we listen without judgment and respond with kindness, we create the kind of environment where shame has no oxygen. We remind people, and ourselves, that being human means being imperfect, and that imperfection never disqualifies us from love. This is why communities, friendships, and families built on honesty matter so deeply. They give us spaces where we don't have to pretend, spaces where we can bring our messy, complicated, unfinished selves and still be embraced. In those spaces, shame loses its voice, and in its place, something far stronger begins to grow: belonging. Perfection is one of the most seductive lies we chase. From the moment we are young, we hear messages that if we just work harder, polish ourselves more, or hide the parts that don't fit the mold, then we'll finally be enough. The perfect body, the perfect career, the perfect family, the perfect life neatly wrapped in a bow. But the truth is, perfection is not only unattainable, it's exhausting, and the harder we chase it, the further away we drift from who we really are. The problem with perfection is that it demands performance. It tells us to present only the shiniest version of ourselves, while carefully editing out the messy parts. Social media has amplified this pressure, turning life into a stage where we constantly compare our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. But what if the very things we try to hide, the struggles, the scars, the imperfections, are the exact things that make us human and relatable? Authenticity, on the other hand, is an invitation to breathe. It's the freedom to say, "This is me." Not flawless, not finished, but real. Authenticity doesn't require that we reveal everything to everyone, but it does ask us to stop pretending. It invites us to live in alignment with our values rather than with other people's expectations. And when we do, we find a kind of peace that no amount of perfection could ever deliver. Consider the people you truly connect with. Are they perfect? Or are they the ones who make you feel safe because they are honest about their struggles? Think of the friend who admits they're overwhelmed, the leader who confesses to mistakes, the parent who says, "I don't have all the answers, but I'm trying." Authenticity builds trust, while perfection creates distance. We may admire people for being polished, but we love them for being real. Chasing perfection keeps us trapped in fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of being seen as not enough. But authenticity flips that script. When we allow ourselves to be seen as we are, we discover that the people who truly matter don't love us because we're perfect. They love us because we're real. And there is a lightness in living authentically that perfection will never offer. We no longer have to earn love. We simply allow ourselves to receive it. Living authentically also invites courage. It means we'll sometimes disappoint others when we choose honesty over people-pleasing. It means we'll face criticism for not fitting into narrow definitions of success. But authenticity reminds us that the goal is not to be liked by everyone. It is to be free, to be whole, to be ourselves. And when we walk in that freedom, we discover that our true worth has never depended on being perfect. It has always been rooted in being real. Connection is one of the deepest human needs, yet so often we approach it through performance rather than honesty. We try to impress, entertain, or present the version of ourselves we think others will accept. We show the curated, polished self instead of the real, unfiltered one. The trouble is, while performance may win us attention, it doesn't win us belonging. True connection doesn't come from what we pretend to be. It comes from what we are willing to share truthfully. When we perform, we're essentially saying, "Here's who I think you want me to be." But when we're honest, we're saying, "Here's who I really am." The first approach may feel safer in the moment, but it creates distance. People connect not with our perfection, but with our humanity. Think of the times someone admitted they were nervous, or confessed they didn't have it all figured out. Didn't it make you feel closer to them, not farther away? Honesty lowers walls, while performance builds them higher. Honesty also builds trust, which is the foundation of every lasting relationship. Trust doesn't come from grand gestures or flawless appearances. It comes from consistency, transparency, and truth, telling even when it's hard. When we know someone will be real with us, we feel safe in their presence. And when we practice that same honesty, we give others the gift of safety too. That kind of connection is rare, but it's also unforgettable. In our culture, there is often pressure to perform, to appear successful, happy, confident, even when inside we're struggling. But every time we choose honesty instead of performance, we send a quiet message: it's okay to be human here. That kind of honesty doesn't just connect us, it liberates us. Because when we stop performing, we no longer have to carry the exhausting weight of pretending. We can finally rest in being ourselves. It's also important to remember that honesty doesn't always mean sharing everything with everyone. It means showing up with integrity, aligning what we say with what we truly feel. It might look like telling a friend, "I can't take this on right now," or admitting, "I made a mistake." It might mean acknowledging joy instead of downplaying it, or admitting pain instead of covering it up. Each act of honesty, however small, strengthens the thread of connection between us and others. And here's the beauty: when we show up honestly, we attract people who are drawn to who we really are. Performance might win applause, but honesty builds belonging. Connection grows not when we impress people, but when we allow ourselves to be known. And in being known, we discover the most powerful truth of all: that we don't have to earn connection by pretending. We can build it by simply being ourselves. Many of us struggle with the idea of boundaries because we confuse them with rejection. We worry that saying no will push people away, that protecting our time or energy makes us selfish. But the truth is, boundaries are not walls meant to shut people out. They are bridges that help us show up more fully, more honestly, and more lovingly. Boundaries are an act of love, both for ourselves and for the people we care about. Without boundaries, resentment begins to build. When we constantly say yes out of guilt or obligation, we eventually feel drained and unappreciated. The irony is, when we give from a place of exhaustion, we're not really offering love. We're offering a version of ourselves that's depleted and frustrated. Boundaries, on the other hand, protect our ability to give freely and joyfully. They ensure that when we say yes, it's genuine, not forced. Think of boundaries like a fence around a garden. The fence doesn't keep life out, it protects the life inside so it can flourish. In the same way, our personal boundaries protect our emotional well-being, our time, and our energy so that we can thrive. And when we thrive, we are more capable of showing up with kindness, patience, and compassion for the people around us. Healthy boundaries don't reduce love, they strengthen it. Setting boundaries also teaches others how to treat us. When we consistently allow people to cross our limits without speaking up, we silently communicate that it's acceptable. But when we clearly and kindly state our boundaries, we send a different message: my well-being matters, and so does yours. That clarity doesn't create distance, it builds healthier, more respectful relationships. People can trust us more when they know where we stand. It's also important to remember that boundaries are not about punishment, they're about responsibility. They are a way of taking ownership of our needs rather than expecting others to guess them. When we say, "I can't attend tonight, I need rest," or "I won't continue this conversation if it becomes disrespectful," we're not pushing someone away. We're modeling what healthy love looks like. We're saying, "I value this relationship enough to be honest about what I need to sustain it." And perhaps most importantly, boundaries give us permission to be whole people. They allow us to protect our time for rest, creativity, joy, and healing. They remind us that our worth is not tied to how much we sacrifice, but to how authentically we live. By honoring our limits, we don't just take care of ourselves, we create relationships built on mutual respect, honesty, and genuine love. In that sense, boundaries are not selfish at all. They are one of the most generous gifts we can give. When life gets hard, our natural instinct is to run from the pain, to numb it, or to pretend it isn't there. We tell ourselves that strength means holding it all together, never letting the cracks show. But resilience isn't built by avoiding struggle, it is forged in the very heart of it. Every time we allow ourselves to face difficulty head-on, we discover that we are stronger and braver than we thought. Struggle, uncomfortable as it is, becomes the soil where resilience takes root. Resilience doesn't mean never falling down. It means learning how to rise each time we do. Struggles come in many forms: loss, disappointment, failure, rejection, and they shake us to our core. But within those moments lies an opportunity. If we allow ourselves to feel the pain instead of running from it, we begin to understand that our story doesn't end with the struggle. It continues with how we respond, and in that response, resilience grows. Avoiding pain often makes it louder. The more we push it away, the more it demands our attention. But when we embrace struggle, we begin to see it as a teacher rather than an enemy. Struggle teaches us humility, empathy, and strength. It shows us what really matters and what we can live without, and over time, it builds a kind of inner sturdiness. A knowing that even if life knocks us down again, we have the capacity to rise once more. Think about the people in your life who embody resilience. Chances are, they are not the ones who never struggled. They are the ones who have walked through fire and emerged with wisdom, compassion, and courage. Their scars are not signs of weakness but of survival. And often, it is because of their struggles, not in spite of them, that they are able to offer strength and hope to others. Resilience also doesn't mean doing it all alone. Sometimes the bravest act in the face of struggle is to reach out and ask for help. It is in those moments of leaning on others that we discover the power of community and connection. Struggle embraced in isolation is heavy. Struggle embraced in the presence of others becomes bearable. Resilience grows not just from individual strength, but also from the support systems that help carry us through. What makes resilience so powerful is that it transforms us. Each struggle we embrace shapes us into someone new, more aware, more grounded, more compassionate. We don't come out of hardship the same person we went in as. We come out refined, like steel strengthened in the fire. That transformation is the quiet gift of resilience. It reminds us that while we cannot always control what happens to us, we can always choose how we rise from it. So many of us wait for joy to arrive in the form of something big. The promotion, the wedding day, the perfect vacation, the dream house. We tie joy to milestones and achievements, as if it only belongs at the peak moments of life. But if we only allow ourselves joy in those rare events, we miss the countless opportunities to feel it in the ordinary. Joy is not something we stumble upon occasionally, it is something we cultivate daily, and gratitude is the path that leads us there. Gratitude shifts our gaze. Instead of focusing on what we lack or what we're chasing, it invites us to notice what's already here. The warmth of morning sunlight, the sound of laughter, the comfort of a meal, the presence of someone we love. These moments are often so simple we overlook them. But when we pause and name them, gratitude turns them into sources of joy. Suddenly, the ordinary is no longer ordinary. It becomes sacred. Joy is fragile without gratitude. Left on its own, it slips through our fingers quickly, overshadowed by worry or comparison. Gratitude, however, anchors joy. It reminds us that no moment is too small to be celebrated. Think about how children delight in the simplest things. A puddle, a butterfly, a silly song. They find joy not because life is perfect, but because they see with eyes of wonder. Gratitude helps us return to that same posture of awe. It's also worth noting that joy and gratitude are not about ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. In fact, they often coexist with struggle. Sometimes, it is precisely in our hardest seasons that gratitude shines the brightest. When a kind word, a small kindness, or a quiet moment of peace feels like a lifeline. Gratitude doesn't erase hardship, but it helps us hold on to joy even when life is difficult. Practicing gratitude doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as writing down 3 things you're thankful for at the end of the day, or pausing to breathe in a moment and silently whispering, "Thank you." It can be sharing appreciation with a friend, or noticing beauty in something you usually rush past. These practices don't just help us feel good in the moment. Over time, they rewire our perspective, training us to notice joy where we once overlooked it. And here is the gift: when we cultivate gratitude in ordinary moments, joy becomes less elusive. We no longer wait for the big thing to finally make us happy. Instead, we find joy sprinkled throughout our everyday lives. Gratitude teaches us that joy isn't something we earn, achieve, or chase. It is something we awaken to, here and now, in the simplest, most ordinary moments of being alive.